All right, folks, welcome back to the Mindful Hunter podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jay Nickel. Now, for a bit of context, I just got back from a grueling mountain goat hunt. It was actually the first guided goat hunt in my new territory here in British Columbia. It was a phenomenal time. Any attempt for me to put it into words is just going to kind of trivialize the experience. We had fog, rain, hot days. We scaled cliffs. We crossed a glacier. We had wade across a glacier lake, like up to our chest. It was nuts. Now, there is a bunch of content hopefully coming out about that hunt in the probably somewhat distant future. So hopefully I'll get a chance to share that with all you guys. But to say I'm grateful right now for the opportunity would be a gross understatement. But I wanted to do a Q&A podcast to basically have a feature film dropping next week, full circle, which details 6 goat hunts over 13 months. And then next Sunday, I leave for Montana for 2 weeks to go hunt elk. So I got a whole bunch of frying pans in the fire right now, but I wanted to get kind of a fresh podcast out. So I figured we would do a Q&A episode. Now, the question that was on everybody's minds, I probably got 6 or 7 different requests to discuss this topic, was Ryan Lampers and the charges that have been laid against him in regard to wildlife violations. Now, I struggled with this. I don't like the idea of creating content or profiting in any way off of other people's misfortune. So regardless of what my own personal feelings might be about the issue, there was a big part of me that was just like, I just don't think I'm going to talk about this, because I didn't want to benefit off of somebody else's misfortune. And however you feel about whatever went down, this man has had a significant, impact in his life in a very negative way. And I don't feel it's appropriate to take advantage of that for your own gain. However, the more I thought about it, the more I also thought, well, we have to be allowed to talk about these things. I think it's one thing to take advantage of it and make some big clickbaity thing and have all these outrageous opinions like all these other news outlets do. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to have an intelligent discussion about this from a principles-based perspective. Because let's be very clear, only charges have been filed at this point. Ryan has not been convicted of anything. And so I think it's premature to even assume that he did it. But I think what we can do is have kind of a hypothetical discussion about some of the implications that if he did do this, and then kind of what it means for him, what it means for the hunting industry. And so I did decide, since everybody's so curious, I will share my thoughts on this issue. Just so we're all on the same page, I'm going to read out the charges that Lampers is accused of, so we have context for this discussion. I'm reading this off the Meat Eater website because they did a pretty decent job of laying it all out in plain English. So the complaint accuses Lampers of killing a 175 4/8 inch mule deer buck on December 1st in the Cove Creek drainage, which includes Management Unit 21 of the Salmon River in Lemhi County. Lampers had a valid tag for Management Unit 28 for the regular season, but that season had already ended, and he killed this buck in 21, which was closed to deer hunting. So he had an expired tag for 21, and then he killed a buck. Sorry, he had an expired tag for 28, and then he killed a buck in 21. That's charge 1. Then Lampers killed a mountain lion 5 days later. Like the deer, he allegedly killed the lion in 21 without possessing proper tags for that unit. But he added falsifying public records to his list of charges because he allegedly told the Idaho Department of Fish and Game officials that he'd shot the lion in 28. 2 days after killing the lion, Lampers shot a wolf in 21. He had the proper tag for that harvest, But when he presented the hide and skull for inspection, game wardens say he claimed to have killed the wolf in 28. He also submitted the kill for reimbursement with the Foundation for Wildlife Management, a nonprofit that pays hunters for harvesting wolves in Idaho and Montana. The foundation offers different reimbursement rates for different units, and since Lampers claimed to have shot the wolf in 28, he was set a check for $2,000. However, since he allegedly shot the wolf in 21, he should have only received $750, the maximum reimbursement for that unit. Idaho statute defines grand theft as stealing $1,000 or more, so Lampers' extra $1,250 justified that charge in the state's eyes. If convicted of grand theft by deception, Lampers will face between 1 and 14 years in prison and a $1,000 fine. The other felony charge for unlawfully possessing a trophy buck carries a 0 to 6 month prison term, a $2,000 fine, and a possible lifetime hunting ban. Just to wrap that up, basically, he is accused of shooting a buck in the wrong unit and after the season was closed. And because that is a trophy buck, it's considered a felony charge because it's over $1,000 impact. He's also accused of killing a mountain lion and claiming it in the wrong unit. And then he's also accused claiming that he killed a wolf in a different unit so that he would get an extra $1,250 bounty. So instead of $750 for killing it in one unit, he got $2,000 for killing it in the other unit that he claimed to have killed it in. So like 3 charges, but then there's all this muddy stuff because of like, it's not only he killed the wrong stuff, he claimed to have killed it in other areas in order to get more money for it. So first of all, I want to reiterate, he has not been convicted of any of these charges. I don't have any personal insider information, but I think this is like caused such a stir in the hunting industry that it's worth a discussion. Okay, the first point that I think deserves some consideration is this idea of, or question, does he owe an explanation to people? And I think I have a bit of a contrarian perspective on this because I 100% believe he does. Whether he's guilty or not, I think he does owe an explanation to people. If you want to live by the sword, you got to die by the sword. For the last, 10, 15 years, this guy has been making a living off of being a public figure in hunting. So because you, the hunting content consumer, pay attention to him and his adventures, he is able to help companies sell product. They in turn pay him money. So because he's able to capture your attention, he makes a living. So my problem is, and as of this moment, he has deleted all his social accounts. So like the day this stuff became public, he deleted everything. And here's my problem with that. So you're telling me that when everything was going good and you were making a bunch of money from hunting and everybody liked you, then you would talk to people and you would show them your animals that you killed and you would make money off of it. And that was okay. But then the very day that went the other way for you, now it's okay to just disappear and not explain anything to anyone. That to me is probably the biggest red flag in this whole thing. Like, if you didn't do this, and I don't know if he did, it's all alleged, it's just accusations at this point. But if you didn't do this, why would you just delete all your social accounts? Now, let's just say hypothetically he did this and he's just like, okay, I screwed up. I don't want to deal with the backlash. I'm going to just disappear forever. I just don't see how I can reconcile that response with a man that has integrity. Like, if you screwed up, take responsibility for it. Like, whether you like it or not, I don't want to use the term role model, but you were an inspiration to people. You wanted to be somebody that people looked up to. If you didn't, why were you on Instagram? Why did you have YouTube videos? Why did you do any of that stuff? Because it made you money, people looked up to you, and you inspired people. So if that's the person who you want to be, then continue to be that person. You can still be that person who's made a mistake. But to make a mistake and then just tuck tail and run and not offer up any explanation whatsoever, because some people say other people made videos that were his friends that he doesn't owe an explanation to anybody. They don't owe an explanation to anybody. I think that's total BS. I think if you want to make your living off of being in the public eye when things are good and you make a lot of money, then when things go bad, like I said before, live by the sword, die by the sword. It's not okay to just tuck tail and run because now you don't like the attention that you're getting compared to when you did. So on the topic of does he owe people an explanation, my personal opinion is yes, he does, because of the past history of making a living off of people paying attention to him. The next interesting question that I think deserves some conversation is, what does this mean for the companies that had a relationship with Lampers? Like, do they have a responsibility to the people who buy their products, or do they share some of the responsibility for this because they were able, like he put up pictures of these animals that he allegedly killed illegally. Because of those illegally taken animals, because of those allegedly illegally taken animals, companies sold products and made money. We can all agree if that's what took place, that is inappropriate. I'm going to take this one step further. So these charges come from incidents that happened at the tail end of 2024. And the even though this only became public, these charges were filed long ago. So it just hadn't been released to the public yet. Now, Peaks in particular has done two things that I personally think, in my opinion, are unforgivable. So number one, they bought Ryan's scope cover after they knew he was convicted, after they knew he was accused of these charges. So they knew, they were fully aware, okay, this guy's been accused of poaching. He's probably going to get nuked off social media. So we're going to get in now and buy his scope cover. Now, whether they did that to be kind to him because they knew it was going to be difficult for him to make a living after the fact, or because they got a good deal on it because they knew it would be worthless after the fact, personally, I still think that's abhorrent. You knew the guy was being accused of poaching, so you bought his scope cover so that you could sell it to people after he exited social media. The second thing they did, and this one I think is even worse. Before Lampers deleted his Instagram, if you go back, the last post he made was in April. However, up until the very day he deleted his account, which was like a week and a half ago, Peaks was still using his stories. So Peaks, while under the full knowledge that he was going to be accused of these charges and that he was going to delete his account, was utilizing his social media influence to sell their products. Like, in my opinion, I'm more pissed at Peaks at this moment in time than I threw my Peaks headlamp in the garbage. I want nothing to do with this company moving forward. How is it morally or ethically okay to knowingly use an account that is about to be publicly accused of poaching to sell your bloody teepees and headlamps right up until the day he deletes the account? And you knew it. You knew all of it. And I don't want to just throw Peaks under the bus. There was an apparel company here in BC that was tied to a guy that got accused of a bunch of poaching charges. And, they used his face and his name to sell products right up until the end. And never made a statement afterwards. Never, like, you could have done something like taken part of the proceeds of the profits that you made from selling gear based off the back of poaching and and donated it to some conservation efforts. You know, these companies could come right out and say, like, there was actually an example, I can't remember the exact details, but there was a bow hunter just like a month ago that got charged with a bunch of stuff, and the company came out with a statement. I think they could have done more, but at least they did something. They acknowledged the fact that it was inappropriate for them to be profiting off of somebody else's poaching. And here's why I want to talk about this. Like, people think I get all bent out of shape about sponsorship, you know, because of like jealousy or some hatred of marketing. And it's like, no, not at all. It's because financial incentives skew human behavior. Now, listen, Lampers is a killer. He's probably one of the best hunters on the face of the planet. I'm I'm not saying he needed to go kill these animals in order to have more fodder for Instagram. But I am saying this is an example of the problem with the incentive structures that we currently have in the hunting space. Like big racks, big horns, lots of animals, work on social media. So like all these hunting influencers, the ones in British Columbia, all these ones that are getting hit up in the States are all under pressure from the companies that they have financial agreements with, that they need to sell a certain amount of gear. And in order to do that, they need to be able to produce a certain amount of content with a certain amount of dead animals. And so there is an additional pressure. And again, I'm not saying that's why Lapers did it, but it's a great opportunity to have this discussion about it. And so obviously companies can't tell the future, and companies are allowed to work with whoever they want. My question is, once it becomes apparent that somebody has done something inappropriate, what responsibility does the company have in retrospect? Like, let's say you could just draw a clean slate and say, okay, Peaks, when you found out about this, the moment you found out about this, what was the proper course of action? Was the proper course of action to buy this guy's scope cover and then continue to use his social media accounts to flog your gear? Or was the appropriate response to say, you know, this is inappropriate, we don't condone this type of behavior, and we no longer think it's appropriate for us to use his accounts, his likeness, or his products in order to make money off of the hunting community? It's a very interesting question. And I personally, it just does not fit with my own morals or ethics that Peaks actively and knowingly used the account and the products of a man who is accused of poaching in order to sell more of their stuff. And so for that, I wouldn't buy anything from Peaks moving forward, and I think it's just reprehensible what they've done personally. Now, the last question I want to get into is like, what effect does this have on his past accomplishments? So he's done a bunch of films with other people. He's known as like a trophy hunter in that he very successfully kills big game animals. So does this put like an asterisk beside all of that? Like, because, you know, again, he's accused of this. I don't know if he's actually done this, but like hypothetically, let's say he did do these things he's accused of. Does that then call into question everything else he's ever done? Well, let's look at it two ways. There's one, let's say hypothetically he did this. There's one potential avenue that this is the first time he's ever done anything illegal in the hunting space. And it just so happens that inside of a week, he killed 3 animals illegally. And then not only did he kill them illegally, he specifically claimed them in different regions just to make more money. Like he could have killed the wolf and just took the $750, but instead he claimed he got it from another region to make an extra $1,250. And that's what made it illegal. So there's one possible option is that he's never done anything illegal before. And then in 1 week, he executes 3 wildlife violations and gets caught for all 3. Okay, that's one option. The other option is that potentially he has adhered to wildlife laws in a somewhat gray manner from time to time, and that every now and then he's kind of pushed the boundaries of what's acceptable in order to accomplish what he wanted to in the hunting space. I don't know Lampers personally. I can't read his mind. I don't know which of those 2 options is correct. But I mean, logic will carry you a long way. How many of you have gotten 1 speeding ticket and it's the only time you've ever sped in your life? Just think about it for a second. How many of you can honestly say that you got caught doing something illegal and it was the only time you've ever done that thing? I mean, the odds would be pretty astronomical of that happening. And I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I'm sure there's somebody on this planet that has literally only ever broken the speed limit once in their life, and that was the time they got caught for it. But I guarantee that's not the norm. And so I think if you were like a logical person, you can't help but, have it cloud your opinion of his past accomplishments. And listen, here's the other thing. There's a whole other angle of this that it's like, if you were not a public figure, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. Like when you choose to become a public figure, you choose to have a certain amount of consequences for your actions. Like nobody chose for Lampers to put him in the spotlight. He's the one who chose that. So when things like this happen, you can't start complaining now because what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If it was good for the last 10, 15, 20 years, how come it's not good anymore? Now, I also think it's important to know that there's a very personal and human element to this. Like, I don't believe the man should be drawn and quartered because he did something wrong. Like, I don't think it makes him a bad person. I don't think it means he should. Here's the thing. I don't even think it means he should lose his livelihood. Like, everybody makes mistakes. I mean, geez, man, I'm 17 years sober. I was a junkie for almost 2 decades of my life. If you want to hear the laundry list of the shit that I've done, it makes this look like taking a candy bar from 7-Eleven, man. Like, I am the last person in the world that is going to judge anybody for what they've done. And I think that if you take responsibility for your actions and you want to make a change in your behavior and you commit to making that change in behavior moving forward, you should be allowed to do so. But you need to stand up and take responsibility like a man in order to do that. And I think that's, if I wanted to voice some of my personal frustrations, that's where I feel a bit, and I know this might seem cheesy, but almost like disappointed. Again, I don't know Lampers well at all. I had him on the podcast once. I texted with him maybe 3 or 4 times, just random gear stuff. But I'd say I know half a dozen people at least who do know him really well. And I can say, based on their kind of opinion of who he is as a man, I'm having problems reconciling their feelings about who he is as a man and how he's choosing to address this. And it creates turmoil for me. The other reason that I'm like contemplating all this stuff is like, listen, I make my living primarily off of creating content. Now, I sell products, I have a hunting outfit business, I have a subscription-based website that people belong to, but essentially the content is what drives all of that. And I make that content in the hunting space. Now, I've gotten known more for, analytical gear reviews than necessarily stacking bodies, but I have still chosen to make my living off of creating content and capturing people's attention. I do it in a slightly different way than most, but I've had to consider this all the time. Like, I remember there's every now and then a content creator will like blow up, and I'll inevitably like get the question like, how come you never got as big as fast? And it's always like, well, you face decisions in this industry. There's a lot of times when you're in the woods all by yourself and like no one's around, you could go down this road and it would lead to those consequences, or you could go down that road and it would lead to those consequences. And I think for me personally, maybe specifically because of my recovery, I was saying something to somebody the other day. I was like, if you've never been at a point in your life where your integrity is the only thing you had left, like everything else was stripped away from you, like your family, your money, your dignity, like in early recovery, like you're just a husk of a human being. And then you get to a point where it's like, my word and who I am as a man is all I have left. And when you've been there, I think those decisions mean more to you. That's why I've never taken sponsorship, and it's why I have always done what I felt is appropriate. Ethically speaking. And, it means it takes a little bit longer because there's fewer dead bodies to create, all the hoopla on Instagram. So when something like this happens to somebody that you know in passing and have respect for, you can't help but like think to yourself, like, God, man, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for companies? What does this mean for everybody else? So listen, I just want to reiterate this one more time. This man has not been convicted of anything. I do think it was an interesting opportunity for discussion. I do think there are consequences for him and the companies that he's worked with. Some of them I don't think are appropriate, and some of them I do. I do feel for him as a human being and as a man. This has got to be an incredibly challenging time for his life, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody. And, I don't have any, ill feelings towards him personally. And I guess I just hope, as with anything else in life, you just, you get through the dark times and you turn a corner, and, the rest, you just salvage whatever you can out of it and move on. So we'll move on to the rest of the Q&A now. I find it almost hard to segue out of that and into like just normal gear questions, but that's what we'll do. The last note I want to make on kind of like heavy topics is this whole Charlie Kirk thing. And I'll keep this like super brief. The only thing I'm going to say is that I think it's absolutely appalling that there are people like, I have pretty conservative beliefs politically, fiscally, geopolitically. I've never made that, I've never hid that, or like, it's been pretty plain if you know who I am. But I can't think of like a single liberal who I would actually rejoice if they were killed. And to see people on the left of the spectrum, like making these videos and like, laughing and all this stuff. Like, it's just, if you ever thought there might be something wrong with the people that you hung out with or the people that you shared beliefs with, I think now is that time. Like, I think it's brutal. I feel for his wife. I feel for his young kids. I have a young daughter. I can't even imagine what would happen if I just didn't come home one day or they had to witness that. Like, it's brutal. And here's the thing about Charlie Kirk, whether or not you agreed with him or disagreed with him, all the dude was ever trying to do was have a conversation. Like, it was really cool to watch him do those campus conversations because he never yelled at people. He never forced his opinions down people's throat. He asked really intelligent questions And if you could outsmart him or outdebate him, like he would have took his lumps. And all he wanted was to further connection through conversation so that we could find solutions that would keep the society moving forward. And for that, somebody killed him. And that's wild, man. Yeah. So anyways, let's try and switch the mood up a little bit and answer some gear questions. So first up, glassing tarps. Yay or nay? Waste of time, worth it if the weather is terrible. So here's what I do. Everybody is going to have a different approach. I have a 7x9 Z-Pax Dyneema tarp. It has individual line locks on 8 locations. So all 4 corners and then in the middle of the straights between the 4 corners. On 5 of those, all 4 corners in the front one, I have put a 2-meter long section of 1.8 millimeter Dyneema cord with a loop in the end of each section. In addition to that, I carry 5 carbon fiber tent pegs. That whole package weighs 5.4 ounces. And it is one of the things that never leaves my pack. I could put it up and sleep under it. I can glass under it when it's sunny. I can hide under the rain from it. I can wrap it around my backpack before I go to sleep at night to serve as a dry bag. I've put it inside bushes before to act as a rain catch so I could get water up in the high country. I think it is one of the single most useful, versatile tools I have in my kit. But I think a huge part of that rests on the fact that it's only 5.4 ounces. So there's really, and it's incredibly quick to set up. The other thing that I use it maybe the most for is an additional vestibule for my tent. I'll hang it like 1/3 over my tent with the additional 2/3 coming out over the door. And then I've got an area during inclement weather where I can boil water, make dinner, hang out, stretch out, whatever I need to do. And it really increases the livability of my camp. But like I said, I think a large part of that equation is the fact that it's only 5.4 ounces. So there's basically no penalty whatsoever for bringing it. Because a sil nylon tarp, I would not feel the same way about. It's way heavier. It holds way more water. So when you go to pack it up, it's even heavier than it was in the first place. It sags all over the place. It just doesn't have the same risk to reward complex that this Dyneema one does. Also, I think the way that I've set it up for myself, being so quickly to deploy and so quick to pack up, that's its value for me. Now it's not cheap. The tarp itself is like $300. I probably spent another $40 on the parts to like make it as versatile. So let's say you have a $350 piece of gear. Now listen, you could have a piece of gear that did the same thing for $100, but it wouldn't have the same weight benefit, strength benefit, versatility benefit. And so that's my opinion on glassing tarps. Like I would not walk around with like a 1.5 pound sil nylon flash tarp with paracord. That just doesn't make sense for me. Unless I knew there was particular weather situations, like it was late winter and I was going to need an extra vestibule. But the thing that I love about this is because it's so light and so strong, there's basically no penalty to taking it. So that's what I feel. Most affordable Western U.S. state to build elk points in. It's got to be Montana. I would say Montana and Colorado. And the reason I'm going to say that is that I'm running the math, not just how much do the points cost, but how often are you going to get an elk tag? Like you could arguably go hunting in Montana and Colorado every 2 to 3 years for the cost of $50 a year for a point, and then the tag cost every 2 to 3 years. There's other states where it's just as affordable to build points, but it's not going to result in a tag as frequently. So if you add up the total investment needed to acquire a tag, it's going to be much higher. Now, the quality of the hunt is going to be completely different. So if we're just talking here about, listen, you just want to go on a trip every now and then, you want to go to some new country, have some different experiences, I think Montana and Colorado will be my number 2 recommendations. Wyoming used to be very, very high on my list, but right now, to get a regular elk tag, you are looking at a minimum of 6 points, which means you're going to need to build points for 6 years in a row before you can get a tag. Whereas in Montana and Colorado, you could go every 2 to 3 years. All right, tore my meniscus packing out a sheep. What's the best way to prepare for next year? The first thing that I'm curious about is, how do you know you tore your meniscus? Was it from some type of physical examination, or have you looked at an MRI? Because if you have not, step 1, go get an MRI and pay for it out of your own pocket if you have to. And even in Canada, it's very simple. Go to a walk-in clinic, say, listen, I want an MRI on my knee. I'm going to pay for it myself. You go find a private clinic. You do need a referral from a doctor, but then you pay $600 out of your pocket and get an MRI. Now you have an objective, data-driven explanation of exactly what's wrong with your knee. Maybe there's a ligament that also has some damage. I mean, there could be some cartilage issues. There could be all kinds of other contributing factors that you're not aware of. So get a very clear, objective kind of review of exactly what's wrong. And then you're definitely going to need some kind of physio. Now that's whether you looking online and just doing stuff at the gym or going to see somebody, I don't care, but you're going to need to strengthen up that leg, because the meniscus serves a function in that leg that it's not going to serve anymore. Also, the thing about a meniscus is that if it tears in particular ways, it can get caught between parts of the knee. And so even if for performance purposes you don't need an operation would not help you, you may need to go get surgery anyways, to get rid of a piece of it, or they can just cut the whole thing out. So that would be the next thing, is like, okay, are you pain-free, relatively pain-free, and there's no like impingements due to the torn meniscus? If all of those things are true, the next thing I would do is a 6-week course of peptides. I just did a whole podcast on this. You can go look it up, but I would run BPC 157 and TB 500 for 6 straight weeks. I would run 500 micrograms of BPC 157 2 times a day, and I would run 2 milligrams of TB 500 every other day. And I would run that straight for 6 weeks. If you're in Canada, I would go see a naturopath and I would get a growth hormone prescription. And I would also go on 2 to 3 IUs of growth per day for that 6-week period. And I think the growth paired with the BPC and the TB is going to give you your best chance of recovery. I obliterated my knee 2 years ago now. I should post up the MRI results. It was unbelievable, like damage to all 4 ligaments, damage to both meniscus, like completely shredded. I've had no operations since then. It's a bit funky, like it wants to pop out every now and then, but I've done a couple courses of peptides, a whole bunch of personally kind of driven physio, and I hunt in the backcountry. I think I'm up to almost 80 days now in 2025. And we just hiked out a goat. We did close to a 13-hour day, came down almost 6,000 feet in elevation. One of the most brutal hikes of my life. I didn't have a single issue with my knee. So it's definitely something that you can manage. Barney or initial ascent. I've never won either. I've never worn either, so I have no opinion on both of those. I'm getting around to doing another backpack review. I will get there. All right, clickbait question. Crossbows, good or bad? Easier, yes, more ethical. All right, let me get this out of the way right now. I do not care what you use to kill an animal as long as it is legal and ethical. However, I will say this. The reason that we have different seasons is that you can adjust the difficulty of a hunt by applying a different weapon restriction to that hunt. Like, nobody is going to disagree that you will kill less elk with a muzzle loader than a 6.5 PRC. It's not an opinion, that's just fact. And so the reason that we have bow seasons is that we can increase opportunity rates, which increases revenue. We can have more people out during archery season for elk in the rut with bows because less people are going to kill elk than if everybody was running around with rifles. That's the whole point. So my argument is that I have no problem with crossbows, but I do not believe crossbows should be included in archery seasons unless you have some form of medical issue. Like if you literally cannot pull back a bow, I don't think it's right that you should miss out on archery season. And I got no problems with like guys who've come home from serving or older guys or even somebody who's had an injury at work and they just physically can't pull back a bow. Use a crossbow because that number is so small, you're not going to have an impact on opportunity. And I believe everybody should have a chance to get out during archery season. So I think that's totally fine. But if you are a full able-bodied individual, you should be using a vertical bow during bow season. And I think crossbows either belong like Utah now has these hams season, handgun, archery, muzzleloader, shotgun. I think you could put a crossbow in with that group of stuff. I think it's somewhere between like, a shotgun, a handgun, archery. Like it's definitely not as effective as a rifle. It's definitely more effective than a vertical bow. So sure, you want to throw a crossbow in with a ham season, knock yourself out. I think you could use it with more difficult seasons. You want to throw crossbows in with muzzleloader seasons, have at her. But for me, I don't believe crossbows belong during like true vertical bow archery seasons because it's way easier to kill stuff with them. You can just walk around with it loaded. You can just pull a trigger, then it shoots. You can have them on a rest. Some of them have scopes. Like it's kind of ridiculous. So yeah, that's my opinion there. What is the best size / brand of solar panel for the backcountry? I only own an Anchor and they don't make it anymore. And I think a new company called Blue Wave is basically just white labeling the Anchor ones because they have the same form factor. I think 28 watts is probably a pretty good size. I think you can go on Amazon and get the Blue Wave ones for, $75 to $100. I think a lot of things in like the battery and electrical market are commoditized in that they're all made at the same place. I've had people who brought the Goal Zero ones, and in my experience, they were kind of garbage. Like they were just so small. It's like, it's a matter of surface area. Like the more surface area you have, the more panels you have, the more light you're going to catch. And it's like, it's different. If you're someplace down south where it's like, it's going to be sunny 15, 16 hours a day, you're close to the equator, the sun is very powerful. Yeah, you could have that thing out for 2 or 3 hours a day and you're going to get enough juice that it's actually going to let you execute everything on your trip that you want to. But up here in BC, I just got back from a 6-day goat hunt. And I think in total, I had maybe 7 to 8 hours of like really effective time during the day when my solar panel was like really charging my batteries. I'd put it out when it's cloudy and you'll get like a little bit of a trickle, but it's going to be hard, especially if you're doing stuff like filming or anything that's requires more battery power to stay on top of that drain without taking a whole bunch of batteries. So that would be my thing. 28 watts. I think the blue one off Amazon is just fine. With elk hunting coming up, what is your preferred calling strategy? So I'm going to back up even further and say like, what's my preferred elk hunting strategy? And I just had a conversation with a good friend of mine about preparing for this elk hunt in Montana. And he was basically, he's like, okay, what are your goals for this hunt? Like, how do you want this hunt to go down? And how, in an ideal circumstance, what style of hunt would you like and how would you like to kill elk, assuming you can kill an elk? And I said, what's interesting is that like, I don't care. I am strategy agnostic. I want to do whatever gives me the highest likelihood of killing an elk. So from a strategy perspective, if that means sleeping in my truck every night at a different trailhead and waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, bombing into an area, checking it, then bombing back that night, driving 50 miles up the road to another trailhead and rinsing and repeating that every single day until I find elk, great. If that means putting on a 60-pound pack and going 7 miles deep, that's fine. If it means putting on a 40-pound pack and doing 2 to 3 day bivy loops, that's fine. As far as strategy, I don't care. I'm not married to anyone. I want to do the thing that's going to give me the greatest likelihood of killing an elk. And the funny part about it is, as I'm putting together my plan, it's really a combination of all of those. And then as far as the actual calling strategy, I do love calling elk, but I like killing elk more than I like calling elk. And so I was talking with this friend of mine, and I'm like, listen, man, if it makes more sense based on the territory where we end up going to, glass up some bulls that are coming up off of private ag land in the morning and then placing myself in an advantageous position and having more of like an ambush style hunt or more of a spot and stalk style hunt, or if it makes more sense for me to like rip a location bugle at some point in the morning, find out where they are, and then, sneak in and just shoot them in their bed or shoot them without them knowing I'm there. If that's what's going to be most effective, then I will do that. If that means doing the classic location challenge, call response type situation and trying to like literally call that thing in with a variety of different calls and strategies, I'm down with that too. Again, I'm trying to be as agnostic as possible this year. The point is to go in and kill, because every year I go elk hunting, it's like I learn new things, and it doesn't make the old things any less true. Like my biggest takeaway from last year was how powerful cow calls are. You can get a bull to bugle back by bugling at him, but that doesn't necessarily indicate the level of interest he has in coming to play. But if you get a bull to bugle with the cow call, that says something very strongly about their level of interest. Like my experience is that if you cold cow call and the bull rips a bugle back, the odds of getting that bull to come in are way higher than if you rip a bugle and he rips one back. So that's, it just goes to show there's new tools to put in the toolkit at all times, and that doesn't make any of the other tools less useful. So that's where I'm at with that. All of that being said, if I could have it my way, like I could just like lay out, I would like to call them in. That's the funnest thing. You rip a bugle, they bugle back, you jump on top, they jump on top, you start raking trees, they start raking, like it's crazy. They come in, you smash them. Like, sure, yes. If you want to know what I would love to happen, that's what I would love to happen. But at the end of the day, I don't care. Whatever strategy I need to execute in order to give me the highest likelihood of killing an elk is the one that I will execute. This gentleman says, more of the not so experienced hunters finding success on the podcast. Those are really helping me. Stay tuned for more. I will get more of those guys on there. Prairie mule deer tactics. Best way to cover ground in the coulees where there's no vantage. This is an extremely challenging question. So for most of you, you know that I guide Alberta mule deer in the southeast part of Alberta. And it's basically like huge, flat prairie area. I still do have 2 spots open for this year, by the way, in the middle of October. Now we're lucky in that like there's enough rolling country that you can get up high. And the thing about those prairies, it's like badlands with like big coulees. You don't really have to get up that high in order to get an advantageous glassing position. So that would be my first kind of tactic. Just get up as high as you can, as early as you can, as the sun is coming up. Catch these bucks out on the flats, and when they dump off into the coulees, drop an onyx pin, and then make a game plan for stalks. And wind is going to be your kind of like limiting factor. You can only stalk in when the wind is in your favor. Now, that being said, lots of times when we're out there, you run out of bucks to stalk. So it's like we're just going to like cruise coulees. Number one, it is a rarely an effective strategy because you have the odds stacked so highly against you. I want you to think about 2 situations. I want you to think about you sitting at the bottom of a cliff in a valley, not moving, just waiting for somebody to come in the valley, and how fast you would notice them moving where there had been no person before. Or I want you to think about you're the person coming into the valley and you need to find the person sitting up against the tree who's not moving whatsoever. Clearly, the dude who's not moving is going to see the dude moving before the dude moving sees the dude not moving. So that's the thing with deer. Not only do they have 270 degrees of vision, hearing that is 50x better than ours, they're not moving and we are moving when you're cruising coulees. So you have to do it painstakingly slow. And when we come up to coulees, we do this thing called staircasing. So basically, if you're looking at the V of a canyon and you're coming at it perpendicularly from one side, every step you take opens up a bunch of country on the far canyon wall. So you basically take one step and you scan that newly exposed terrain on the canyon wall, looking for a tine. Hopefully you're seeing the tine first, because if you can see the tines before his head, that means his eyes can't see you. And so you take a step, scan the wall. Take a step, scan a wall. And we call it staircasing because you're kind of moving down into the canyon one stair at a time. Now you can do the same thing in a canyon, but it would just depend like what angle you're walking, whether the wall on the left or the wall on the right opens up. But you basically have to just go so painstakingly slow that you don't open up too much country at once that you can't pay attention to where a buck might be bedding, and then he sees you before you see him. So it's pretty low on my list of strategies, but sometimes when you run out of stocks, you don't have a choice, and that's just the only thing you're going to do. So you got to get the wind in your face and go as slow as possible. How much you weighing these days? Well, before the goat hunt, I weighed 222 pounds. And when I got home from the goat hunt, I weighed 214 pounds. So I lost 8 pounds in 6 days. Now, a lot of that is just water. I woke up this morning at 217. I would say I'm probably about 220 right now. My goal is for next year, at this exact point in time, I want to be 210. So I'm hoping to shave about a pound a month over the next year. Stormworthy ultralight tent. I'm looking at the MLD Duo Mid XL versus Argali's matching model. I don't know the MLD. That's Mountain Laurel Designs. A Duo Mid does not sound like Argali only has teepees, unless you're talking about the Owyhee. If you truly want a storm-worthy tent, my opinion is going to be to tell you to get a freestanding shelter. You are just never going to get the storm-worthiness out of a trekking pole shelter that you do out of a freestanding shelter. I just recently reviewed the Durston X-Mid 2 Solid, and I was very surprised at how stormworthy that was. That's a trekking pole shelter that's not freestanding. That is probably the only one that I would be willing to recommend. The teepees are only so good, and I love a teepee. I use them all the time, but any single trekking pole shelter is only going to be so strong. And so if you really want something that you're going to go up into the high country with, you got to take a freestanding shelter. I think something like the Durston X Dome is great. I took an MSR Access 1 this winter. That was incredibly strong and small. I still like my Sea to Summit Telos TR2. And then I just recently ran again the Stone Glacier Solus 1P. Now that thing is bomb proof. It is not light. It's like 5 to 6 pounds, but I think there's 10 millimeter DAC poles. Yeah, it was that is a beefy tent. Like you would need, hell to come rolling through to blow that thing over. So yeah, I would not be going with a trekking pole style shelter if you want something that's truly stormworthy. If you just want something that's going to like stand up to the odd thing and you want the weight benefit of a trekking pole shelter, then I would recommend the Durston X-Mid line. Whether or not you go solid, pro, 1P, 2P, I don't know. But in my testing, it had the kind of beefiest structure to it. Uh, okay, this guy asked a question and he said he was going to put it in a DM. And he asked the question, but I'm going to paraphrase it. So his question was, how do you know when to support local versus people that have things manufactured overseas? And then he brought up a couple of examples of companies in British Columbia, one company that used to make stuff here and now makes stuff overseas, and then another company that makes all their stuff kind of handmade here in BC. And here's the thing. I personally don't really have an emotional attachment to where things are made. Like, I'm going to evaluate the quality of the product itself. Like, one of the companies this guy used, the example was Frontiersman, which is a knife making company here in British Columbia. They also do a bunch of leather goods. Tanner's an awesome guy. I'm a huge fan of Frontiersman. Now, Frontiersman's value proposition is that they make custom and hybrid custom knives. And so the quality that you get and the sense, like the sentimental value and the craftsmanship is so high that like that's their unique value that they're able to deliver to the market. That would be impossible. Like, you cannot compare a Benchmade knife to a Frontiersman knife. Like, if you want to pay a premium and have something that unique and that special, like, you have no choice but to get it made from somebody who handmade it. So if all of a sudden Frontiersmen started getting their stuff made in China, I'm like, well, that's not the same company anymore. But now let's take another company that this guy brought up was Ape Equipment. So Ape Equipment used to hand make all of their gaiters, and now they make their gaiters overseas. Okay. Basically, you are stitching together material. There's no difference between how material is stitched together here or stitched together in China. Now, there are caveats to that. Assuming you have all your QC in place, the end quality, in fact, for most overseas manufacturing is actually better because they have entire systems designed to do it effectively at scale. So let's even put aside the question of cost and only talk about the quality of the product or the closeness of that product to your expectations at the time you get it. I have run the Ape Equipment gaiters pre-China manufacturing, and I have run the Ape Equipment gaiters post-China manufacturing. And from a quality perspective, there was no difference. If anything, I think the China ones were marginally better. And so if I'm looking at a pair of gaiters, I'm going to look at the quality of the product, I'm going to look at the design, and I'm going to look at the cost. And if I can check those three boxes, I don't care where it's made, personally. Now, what you may need to ask yourself is that one of your driving values, having things made locally? And are you willing to pay a premium in order to have them made there? I have my boxers made overseas. It is physically impossible to produce a boxer in Canada that would be even remotely competitive price-wise. And so if I don't think it's likely that people are going to pay $80 a pair for underwear. So I wouldn't make them here anyways. But I also don't have like a big driving, I don't have an issue with global manufacturing. Yes, I think some things could be realigned and, wages and places could be differently. And I think you should, I was very intentional with where I selected my stuff to be made. So I don't think every system is perfect, but I personally believe we live on a globe and a bunch of different stuff happens on different parts of the globe. And we could take advantage of the fact that different places are better at different stuff. And I don't personally have a deep rooted, philosophical belief that I would prioritize, local manufacturing over global. Now, if things are like priced the same, and the quality of the product is the same, I suppose I would prioritize local over global, all else being equal. But it's not a big part of my decision process when making a gear purchase. Why'd your partner bail on the second part of the goat hunt? Well, my friend, my film Full Circle is being released next Wednesday, September 17th, and I will get into that question in detail. Top five pieces of gear in 2025 that stuck out to this year and that you didn't expect. I will do an educated, like a more thorough video on this probably as the season comes to a close because I still have a bunch of new stuff I want to test. Off the top of my head, the two surprises for me were the mountain stick from MTN Gear and the Durston X Mid 2. I really didn't think I was going to like a trekking pole shelter. I really didn't. It's not that I don't like trekking pole shelters because I will use the TP every now and then, but there's a lot of stuff I don't like about trekking pole shelters for mountain hunting uses. And the X Mid really surprised me. And then the mountain stick from MTN Gear. I never thought in a million years that I would ditch two trekking poles in favor of one device that kind of did the same thing. But in my opinion, it is so vastly superior to trekking poles. Other than testing purposes, I personally will never go back to running two trekking poles again. And in fact, both of the guys that I just went on this goat hunt with are extremely experienced mountain hunters. And both of them only took one trekking pole. Okay. So even when they bought a pair, they chose to leave one at home because more was just a more effective, one was just a more effective solution for them than carrying both. How far from camp do you shit when you were in the backcountry? I've heard 200 yards. Is this literally a question? Listen, man, it's a matter of etiquette and being polite. When I'm camping by myself, I mean, 20 yards, like how long am I going to be camping there? Am I going to be camping there for a week? All right, then I might like walk off a distance so my camp doesn't smell like shit. I am not walking 200 yards to take a dump. I will tell you that right now. Now, when I'm in a camp with multiple people and we're going to be there for a couple days, normally what we do is like pre-assigned shitting areas. Like, hey, you see that big rock over there? I'm going to be going shitting behind there for the next 2 or 3 days. And then each other person finds their own little area and you know that like those areas are off limits for the next couple days. So if you're by yourself, I mean, as long as you're not downwind, who really cares? Do whatever is like convenient. And if you're with other people, again, I don't necessarily care how far you are. Yeah, there's smell issues and stuff, but it's like, just do what's considerate and let everybody know what your plans are. How much did doing the shoot to hunt course this year affect your confidence going in? Radically affected it. I would say for things under 500 yards, when I've got like a solid, 60 seconds to 2 minutes to set up, I don't think there's a thing on this planet I couldn't kill. Regardless of now, if there's crazy wind or something, okay, fair enough. But I mean, like, as long as it's like regular mountain hunting conditions, even challenging ones, I'm uber confident. If I get it in my sights, I'm going to drop it dead. And I will admit that before that, that was not the case. Like there was definitely this bit of like I don't want to say hope, but there was some. It's like, hope when pull this trigger, like this thing drops. And now it's more like when I pull this trigger, this thing's going to drop. I've already noticed though, I haven't had the opportunity to practice as much as I'd like to, and I already want to go do the course again because I think you have to do things a number of times to like really drill it in to where it just becomes part of your subconscious. And I don't think I'm there yet. I think I need to go do another course, and I think I need to practice even more than I already am. Mental toughness or physical fitness? What's more important? You put a gun to my head, I'm going to say mental toughness, but I think the two go hand in hand, and you're doing yourself a disservice if you're going to look at them differently, because I think the more physically fit you are, the more mentally tough you will become. And also the less energy you need to exert being mentally tough, because there's less time that you, have to just grind it out because you're just not being pushed that hard. This last goat hunt was a phenomenal example. I'm in some of the best shape I've ever been in my life. I turn 47 years old in 9 days. And I've been crushing the mountains this year, mostly because of the principles from the book, Training for the Uphill Athlete. However, about a week and a half before this goat hunt, my kid got me viciously sick. Like, I was a mess. And I was probably like 50 to 60% recovered when this goat hunt started. And it was big lung stuff, like just hawking up stuff, and the nose was plugged, couldn't breathe. And doing this hunt, it was like doing it, but being a fat out of shape guy. So I still had my level of mental toughness, but all of a sudden my level of physical fitness went way down. And what I noticed was I had to dig a lot deeper on the mental side. Plus I was guiding, and the two guys I was with were legit dudes. So it was like, I couldn't be drag assing. And so I found there was definitely a lot more times during this hunt when I had to dig deep, and I felt very challenged in order to like just keep up the pace and keep moving. Whereas if I'd have had my normal level of physical fitness, yeah, still would be hard, but it wouldn't be such a grind because my capabilities were so much higher. So yeah, I don't think it's like an either or. I think it's like a yes and. What are the reasons you shoot ELDX rounds versus other? Do you use it on all your game? So let me like back up a little bit. I prefer a highly fragmenting bullet. So that could be ELDX, ELDM, Match Kings. There's a bunch of different bullets, like Burgers kind of go in that category. The DTACs kind of go in that category. Like any bullet that when it impacts the animal is going to upset and disperse into fragments. The reason I like those bullets is they create bigger wound channels. We can get in a debate about this all day long. I don't really care to debate. If you believe that a larger caliber bullet that is going to maintain maximal weight, so like something like a solid copper or a more traditional pedaling bullet, if that's how you want to kill stuff, fill your boots, don't care, not going to argue with you. But from the physics I have looked at, the terminal ballistics I have looked at, the pictures I've looked at, the animals I've seen shot, bullets that break apart when they hit the animal more often create a bigger wound channel. And if our goal is to incapacitate the animal as quickly as possible, I want the biggest hole in that animal I can get. Coupled with the fact that I want that bullet in the most precise location as possible. Because then somebody would say, well, why wouldn't you use a 300 PRC ELDX instead of a 6 Creedmoor ELDX? And the reason is, and I'm just using those as an example, 95% of the population, 99% of the population is going to be able to put that 6 Creedmoor bullet in a more precise location than the 300 PRC bullet. And I would rather have precision of placement over a slightly greater wound channel. Because once you see, like let's look at a 108 ELDM that you could shoot out of a 6 Creedmoor. Once you see the wound channel that creates, going from that 108 ELDM to a 225 ELDM in a 300 PRC, there's not actually that much of a difference. And the precision that you can put that 108 ELDM, there is a significant difference in that. So that's why for me, I like heavy for caliber, highly fragmenting bullets. I have had the opportunity to watch 8 animals die this year. Okay. 5 black bear and 3 goats. All 8 animals were killed with highly fragmenting bullets. I have not lost an animal this year. All of those were killed by clients except for one. I have not had to look for an animal this year. Almost every single one of those animals just died in sight. And I think a huge part of that is because of using highly fragmenting bullets. So when clients call and say, what do you want me using? I go heavy for caliber, highly fragmenting bullets, ideally in a caliber that you feel very comfortable with. If you've been shooting a 300 Win Mag your whole life and you can, drop in 1.5 MOA groups at 500 yards. I don't care. Bring a 300 Win Mag. But if you're not that kind of guy, like 6.5 PRC and down is my preference. Will you have an updated tent versus tent head-to-head since your Telos TR2 video? Yeah, tent versus tent is weird. The last tent I picked up, I just got it a couple weeks ago, is the Durston X-Dome. It's funny because I just ran the Solus, and I guess the X-Dome and the Solus from Stone Glacier would be a really interesting head-to-head that I could do, because they both kind of have their pros and cons. Yeah, I can do something like that for sure. I've been trying with shelters. There's been a lot of really cool developments in shelters lately, like this X-Dome I'm very, very excited about. And so I think with material development and like structure geometry, we've almost broken into new ground, where I would have told you needed more like a minimum of 4 to 5 pounds to really consider like a mountain hunting tent storm worthy. But like these new shapes with these new materials, it's like we're getting down to like 3 pounds for some of these things. And you're not like living in a tiny bubble. Like that's the thing. Like if you look at the Hilleberg Solo, that thing's brutal to live in. I've spent multiple winters in that thing, and it's like the walls drape down on you, your shoulders get wet, you have no room inside, the vestibule is tiny. Like it is an absolute tank and will withstand Armageddon, but it is not a livable shelter. When you get in something like the Stone Glacier Solus, it's a very livable shelter compared to the Solo. And the X-Dome 1 Plus is even more livable. The question becomes, is the heavier Solus more storm worthy than the lighter X-Dome 1 Plus? Because they have different geometry, they have different materials. Maybe you guys let me know, like, what style of shelters are most important to you? Because the other thing is, like, I'm going elk hunting and I'm taking an Argali Absorka 4P teepee for me and my hunting partner. And I guarantee where we're going to be hunting elk, that is going to be more than enough. We're going to be in the timber, great spots to put in pegs, lots of cover, lots of shelter. We're going to have lots of room inside there, can keep all our gear. We can both sleep in there. Like it's going to be ideal. Anyways, yeah, I'll do some more shelter stuff. I got a lot of that on the way. Are you going to check out Outdoor Vitals Mountain Pursuit line? 100%. I was kind of hoping it was going to be here when I got back from my goat hunt, because I would like to take it elk hunting. I still haven't seen a package show up. That reminds me, I will, I'm going to actually make a little note right now while I'm on the podcast in my to-do list for later today. And I will say email Outdoor Vitals and see if they can ship that stuff to me before I have to leave for my elk hunt. Still happy with the Tikka versus higher money options. 100%, hands down. The only thing different I'm doing is I'm going to rebarrel my 6.5 PRC into a 6UM later on at this year at some point. I have no plans on moving away from the Tikka platform. Super happy. Ways to dry wet boots in the backcountry. I saw that this question got asked, and I love this question. And here's the secret. It's the same way you dry out everything in the backcountry. Body heat. I actually learned this over 20 years ago. So I started tree planting when I was 23 years old. I'm almost 47. So 24 years ago, I started tree planting. And when we got back to camp at night, everybody would take off their boots. And depending on how, cranked the dry bus was, you might or might not get dry boots the next day. And then I can't remember if it was like serendipity or if I did it on purpose. But one night I just wore my boots all night because everybody's putting on, Crocs weren't really a thing back then, but like putting on sneakers or flip flops. And I just wore my boots all night. And by the time I went to bed, my boots were dry. And I was like, it just clued into me. I'm like, oh, if I just don't take my boots off, my boots dry out because the heat from my feet is forcing the moisture out. I've talked about this before, but I'll give a quick refresher. You dry apparel and gear out through pressure differential, okay? nature abhors the loss of equilibrium. So when you have a high pressure system, it tries to move air to the low pressure system. So when you finish hiking and you get up to the top of a glassing location, if you're wearing your base layer and you are wet and cold, the pressure inside the base layer and the pressure outside the base layer is the same. The only difference is you have a wet piece of clothing attached to your body. Now, if as soon as you get up there, you put your down puffy on top of your wet base layer, you're going to heat up immediately. And the heat creates a high pressure system inside the puffy jacket and a low pressure system outside the puffy jacket. That means the high pressure air must move, and it's the heat that's creating the pressure. So as long as you have heat and you can stay on top of the amount of moisture you have with the amount of heat your body can generate, that's why you need certain types of sleeping bags and certain, quality of down jackets. As the air from the high pressure system inside the down jacket moves through the down to the low pressure system outside the down jacket, it carries the moisture with it. Okay. And that's why when you first put on your down jacket, you're going to notice it gets damp. But then the longer you wear it, it dries itself out. And the boots are the exact same way. As long as your feet are hot, like warm, moderately warm, which is if it's on a regular day, winter hunts can be a kind of a different animal, but as long as your feet are somewhat warm, just don't take your boots off until you go to bed. And you will have those boots like 90% dry. I mean, you want to go real far? You could wear them in your tent while you sleep. That'll really dry them out. But yeah, the trick is don't take your boots off. Did you get to let lead fly on one of those goats? Yes, I did. And I will tell you, I am responsible for killing one of those goats. And a slight plug again, full circle, getting dropped September 17th. What are some key training exercises someone could do to prep for a goat hunt? Here's number one is zone 2. So endurance is a function of metabolic capacity, not cardiovascular capacity. So your ability to maintain endurance in the mountains and keep hiking and hiking and hiking is not a function of how much cardio you have. It is a function of your ability to execute fatty acid oxidation within your body and extract energy from fat. And the only way to train your body to do that is to do that. And the only way to do that is to spend a significant amount of time in zone 2. You can do this on a stair mill, you can do this rucking, you can do whatever you want, but you want to keep your heartbeat within, your heart rate within zone 2. A little bit of zone 1, a little bit of zone 3, it's fine, but like in that general region. The second thing that I'm going to recommend, especially after the hunt that I just came off of, is prioritizing single leg exercises, specifically lunges and step ups and step downs, weighted step ups and step downs and lunges. I think coming down out of the mountains is harder on your body than going up and into the mountains. So those would be my two major recommendations, because if you got your endurance up by executing a high volume of zone 2 work, and then you prepped your musculoskeletal system with a high volume of single leg training, ideally lunges and step ups and step downs with weight, I think you'd be in a phenomenal spot. Obviously, you need some rucking in there, but you would be light years ahead of most people who show up for goat hunts. What bino pack do you recommend for Zulu 6 12x42? They're the same size as like a regular pair of binos, so you don't actually need a special bino pack. When you get up into the 50 mil Zulu 6 HDX Pros, you start needing a significantly different pack. Now, the two bino packs I've been running head to head this season are the Alaska Guide Creations Ravis Flex and the Stone Glacier Sentinel. I have things I like about both those packs. I would say if you're more of a minimalist person, like you like less things on your chest, the Ravis Flex is probably my preference. It's such a cool bino harness. And if you like more stuff on your chest, like you want a rangefinder and a phone and a little pouch to put stuff in and maybe a place to stick a magazine, I think the Sentinel is my preference and the superior choice. I will be doing a head-to-head review on those, but probably not for the next month or two. Like I am slammed with hunting and guiding until the end of November. So I will try to keep some content coming, but clients are more important than putting up YouTube videos. So I'll do what I can, but I'm only capable of so much. What has been the biggest unlock in your goat success? I would say the biggest unlock in my goat success has been the same thing as the biggest unlock in the rest of the success that I've had, specifically this year. And it's a culmination of time in the field with focus. I was saying to somebody the other day, if I could go back and do things over again from when I really started hunting, I recognized the other day I was looking at my emails and I found out I did my BC core course. And that's what we have to do to get a hunting license in BC in 2016. And so I've been hunting for 9 years. And the first 2 or 3, I mean, barely hunting at all. So like really only like hunting for the last 6 years. And if I could change anything about those last 6 or 7 years, it would be 2 things. Number 1, I would look for mentorship sooner, or I would look to somehow get involved in a community. And I know that's a very hard thing to do because most of the communities are not the type of people that I want to be hanging out with. Like it's tough, but I would find some way to create more relationships with people. I had this idea in my head that if I didn't figure out how to do stuff myself, it was a failure. And I recognize now that's a flawed perspective, and that's just my own ego and pride. And it held me back for a long time. And then number 2, I would focus on 1 or 2 animals. Ever since I first started hunting, I've been all over the map. Like I'm going to do a sheep hunt this year, an elk hunt next year, a bear hunt as well. And then I'm going to go on a deer hunt, and then I'm going to go for goat. Like I wanted to hunt everything at once and get good at it all at once. And so what happened, I was like getting marginally better at all species at the same time, but that meant I never really got great at any one thing. Now I've been hunting all of them long enough, like it's starting to piece together, and I'm starting to get to that point where I feel very effective. Like I feel very effective hunting goats right now. Like I feel like given half a chance in a decent amount of time, I can go in the mountains, I can find a goat and I can kill it and I can bring it out. Like that's not a matter of hope anymore. Like I've got this, you know? And that can be evidenced through killing 3 goats in the last 2 months in different locations with different people. And so that's the second one. I would have just picked an animal or 2 and probably complementary animals. Then you could do 2. Like I think you could pick like mule deer and bear because they're at different parts of the year. When you're killing bear in the spring, you could be scouting for mule deer. You know, when you're killing deer in the fall, you could be noticing, bear movements and then knowing where to set up cams for the following year. Like they really go hand in hand. So that would be an exception where I think you could do a couple at once. But I would like find my favorite thing and focus most of my energy on that. And so I think what just finally happened is just that like the brute force of field days. Like last year, I think I spent something like 128 days in the field. This year, it's only September 11th, and I think I'm up at like 80 or something. Like I'm going to end up with something close to 150 days a year in the field. Like think about that. There's only 365 days a year in the field. If you spend 120 days in the field, that means that every 3rd day you were in the field, or 1/3 of the week you were in the field. And so it is the single largest contributing factor to my success. And I think it's the single most important thing for people to learn moving forward and to prioritize. Like if you have an extra $250, don't buy a new sleeping bag, take 1 more day off work and go scouting. Like I think the more time in the field is going to contribute more impactfully to your overall success than any amount of gear ever will. How do you store your food in the backcountry, keeping bears in mind? I've said this on the podcast before. I will say it again. I do literally Nothing. I keep my food in my backpack outside of my tent, or sometimes I keep it right in my tent. A lot of times, if I'm deep in the backcountry, I want it in my tent with me in my tent with a weapon. And if the bear wants to come get it, it's going to get in for a fight because I am more concerned about waking up with no food than I am about a bear coming to my tent for food. It just doesn't happen. You like, yeah. And just ask around. Like, I think this whole like hanging food 15 feet up in a tree. Listen, if you're deep in grizzly country, I wouldn't keep meat. I wouldn't keep my game bags and like fresh quarters, hanging around camp. But as far as like dehydrated meals inside of a Ziploc bag, inside of a dry bag, it's like a less than a 1 on a scale of 1 to 10 about how worried that makes me about bears. So that's what I do. I'm not saying that's what you should do, but that's what I do. Did I do any hunting during my time in Australia? No, I did not. And goddamn, do I regret that now. Going back to Australia and getting to do some hunting, or going over to New Zealand and getting to do some hunting, are high on my list. What are your top 3 ways you like to use my game meat? Well, if I just go back and like look at what I actually do, sausages are my number 1 fave. For me, it's just convenience. My wife is a vegetarian and my daughter is 9 years old. So it's like, I'm not doing 10-pound roasts. The amount of like quality steaks you get out of most game animals is not super high. So I'm looking for portions that I can freeze and thaw easily and conveniently and package conveniently. So I can make, 6 packs of sausages. I can take that out. I can have 2 sausages a night, 3 nights in a row. I can alter the flavoring and the fat content of the sausages to taste and perform the way I want. I can give away sausages and it creates really great, sentiment and will with non-hunting individuals. So my number 1, and it's fun to make and you feel like you're creating something. So number 1, sausages, hands down. This almost might be like a 1B, but number 2 would probably be like meat sticks, like pepperoni sticks. They come in super handy. I take them in all my backcountry meals. You can leave them out for weeks at a time if you smoke them dry enough. They're super fun to give away. Love them. And I think honestly, after that, if I'm just going on volume, it's just ground, because I can do burgers, I can do pasta sauce, I can do all kinds of stuff. Now listen, I love sous videing a neck roast. I love shredded tacos in the slow cooker. I love elk backstrap steaks. I love a good slow cooked, sirloin roast. 100%. I love all those things. But I bet you if you add all those kind of weird odds and ends up, that's probably 10% of the game meat I eat. And sausages, pepperoni sticks, and ground is the other 90%. Like these days with bears, unless I am going to brine a ham and smoke a ham out of the hindquarter, I will grind 100% of that bear. And then I'm going to just do a combination of adding a little fat and putting it in 2 or 5 pound packs for me to just do ground stuff with it at home, like burgers and sauce. And I'm going to create sausage out of the rest, and probably smoked sausage like pepperonis, because I know I can just smoke it at 165 for 6 hours and then I can give it away. I can eat it. I never have to worry about it. So that's what I do with the vast majority of my game meat. Rifle sling recommendations or ways you'd recommend to carry a rifle. So I was a Kafaru gun bearer for a while. So for those who don't know, a Kafaru gun bearer, and there's other options of this, it's basically like a pouch that hangs down off your hip belt. And then you have a piece of nylon webbing that basically clips on from the shoulder strap, the front of the shoulder strap of your backpack. So you can basically just hit one clip and just lift your rifle up and be ready to shoot. If I was hunting in blacktail country or some like still hunting in some way where I could need my rifle at a moment's notice, but I was still like in steep country where I needed both hands in order to climb around, I still think a Kafaru gun bearer is the superior strategy. However, for 90% of my hunts, like any type of mountain hunt where it's like, you're not going to run into a goat while you're hiking into goat country, because it's like, where you're hiking and where they live are mutually exclusive. I've just gone back to putting my pack on putting my rifle on my pack. It keeps it out of my face. It's just less of a pain in the ass. My pack rides better. It's better. I would prefer when I can hang it down my pack a little bit so the whole barrel doesn't stick up out of the top, but that's not really a deal breaker. Now, all of that being said, I recently got the slim version. I think it's called the Claw by Quake Slings, and it's like a rubberized sling that, because of the type of rubber they have on it, it just basically sticks to whatever fabric you put it on. So when you put the sling over your shoulder, the gun just stays there upright and it doesn't keep sliding back around. And the slim version in particular is quite lightweight. So because I have my gun on my pack 95% of the time, I want a small sling that's going to be light and isn't going to get caught on a bunch of stuff and isn't going to get in my way when I go to shoot. So I have been incredibly pleased at that sling. So that would be my recommendation. Specifically the slim version of the Claw. And I think Quake is the actual company that makes that. Okay. Wow. That was a beefy podcast. So there you go. There you have it. I hope that was helpful. I'm still not sure how I feel about all of my sentiments about lampers that I put up front, but I've always been very authentic and very open with everybody who listens to this podcast. So just recognize that I'm still unsettled in how I feel about the situation. I tried to be as honest as I could about the thoughts that I was having. I don't think he's a bad guy. I don't think he deserves to be eviscerated. But I also think if he is, guilty of some of the things that he's been charged with, he should own up to it and take responsibility for it. So yeah, that's a very fluid situation. Any housekeeping stuff? I got 2 mule deer spots left in Alberta in October. I got 1 spot for an any weapon mule deer hunter in BC the last week in November. I've got I think I'm 60 or 70% booked for spring bear. So if you want to come up to BC for a bear hunt, let me know. And yeah, that's about it. All underwear are in stock except for large. And there will be more large back in stock in 4 weeks. So I'm just going to leave that open. And if you want to order it, I'll just ship it in 4 weeks. And if you don't want to order it and wait, just don't order it and you can wait for the 4 weeks. We have some new product announcements coming soon that I'm super excited for. And the major news really is that my goat film Full Circle is going to drop next week, Wednesday the 17th. I think I'm going to do a live premiere. So I think I'll schedule it for something like, 7 p.m. PST. And there'll be a live chat room. I'll have a bunch of stuff to give away. It's been a while since I've dropped like something that I really consider a hunt film that I'm proud of. And I think this is arguably better than anything else I've ever done before. Not that I'm some kind of great filmmaker. It was really just the opportunities that presented themselves. Like I just was lucky enough to get my ass kicked a lot on camera and just kept a shitload of footage over the last 13 months across 6 different hunts with multiple different people. And so I just had the opportunity to tell this really cool story, and I've worked very hard to put it together in what I think is in an interesting and compelling way. So if that's something that lands for you guys, as always, I appreciate the support. But again, as always, if you could engage with this content in any way, shape, or form, like, comment, share, subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. And as always, thank you for tuning in.